Have you ever wondered why your prescription drugs cost so much? You carefully choose a health insurance plan, pay your premiums, and yet the price of essential medication seems to keep rising. There's a powerful player in the pharmaceutical supply chain that often goes unnoticed. Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. These companies act as intermediaries between drug manufacturers, pharmacies, and health insurance plans. They are responsible for negotiating drug prices, processing prescription claims, and creating formularies, lists of covered medications. While PBMs can play a role in containing costs, their practices are often shrouded in secrecy, raising concerns about transparency in their impact on drug affordability. PBMs emerged in the 1960s as a way to manage the growing complexity of prescription drug benefits. Initially, their role was relatively straightforward, processing claims and creating pharmacy networks. However, over the decades, their power and influence have grown significantly. Today, the three largest PBMs control nearly 80% of the market, giving them immense leverage over drug manufacturers and pharmacies. They negotiate rebates and discounts from drug makers in exchange for including their products on formularies. PBMs also determine how much pharmacies are reimbursed for dispensing medications, impacting their profitability. While PBMs are often touted as cost savers, their impact on drug prices is a subject of intense debate. Critics argue that the lack of transparency in their operations makes it difficult to assess whether they are truly passing on savings to consumers. Furthermore, some PBM practices, such as spread pricing, raise concerns about potential conflicts of interest. Spread pricing occurs when a PBM charges a health plan more for a drug than it reimburses the pharmacy, pocketing the difference. This practice can inflate drug costs for patients and undermine the financial stability of pharmacies. The opaque nature of PBM operations has sparked calls for greater transparency and regulation. Lawmakers and consumer advocates are pushing for measures to shed light on PBM pricing practices and ensure that they are acting in the best interests of patients. Understanding the role of PBMs is crucial for navigating the complex world of prescription drug pricing. By understanding how these powerful entities operate, consumers can better advocate for themselves and demand greater accountability from a system that too often prioritizes profits over patient well-being. PBMs operate in a complex ecosystem, generating revenue through various means. One of their primary revenue streams is rebates from drug manufacturers. Drug makers offer rebates to PBMs in exchange for preferential placement on formularies, the list of drugs covered by a health plan. The higher a drug's position on the formulary, the more likely it is to be prescribed, as patients often face lower out-of-pocket costs for drugs on higher tiers. PBMs leverage their market power to negotiate substantial rebates, which they claim help lower drug costs. Another key revenue source for PBMs is administrative fees. Health plans pay PBMs to manage their prescription drug benefits, which includes processing claims, negotiating with pharmacies, and creating formularies. These fees are typically calculated as a percentage of drug spending or on a per member per month basis. The size of these fees can vary significantly depending on the PBM and the services included in the contract. Critics argue that these fees lack transparency and can contribute to higher overall healthcare costs. Spread pricing, a controversial practice, also generates revenue for PBMs. Spread pricing occurs when a PBM charges a health plan more for a drug than it reimburses the pharmacy, pocketing the difference as profit. For example, a PBM might charge a health plan $100 for a drug while only reimbursing the pharmacy $70. This practice can inflate drug prices for patients and squeeze the margins of pharmacies, potentially leading to higher costs or reduced services. Spread pricing has faced scrutiny from lawmakers and regulators concerned about its impact on drug affordability. One of the most contentious aspects of PBM operations is spread pricing. This practice involves charging health plans more for a drug than what is reimbursed to the dispensing pharmacy. The difference, known as the spread, is retained by the PBM as profit. While PBMs argue that spread pricing helps offset administrative costs and negotiate lower drug prices, critics contend that it lacks transparency and can lead to higher costs for patients and health plans. The opacity surrounding spread pricing makes it difficult to determine whether the PBM is truly passing on savings or simply padding its own profits. Formulary design and management also raise concerns about PBM influence over drug prices and patient access. PBMs create formularies, which are lists of drugs covered by a health plan. They negotiate rebates and discounts with drug manufacturers in exchange for favorable placement on the formulary. Drugs placed on higher tiers of the formulary are often subject to lower out-of-pocket costs for patients, making them more likely to be prescribed. However, critics argue that formulary decisions are not always based on clinical effectiveness or patient needs. Instead, they suggest that PBMs may prioritize drugs that offer higher rebates, potentially limiting access to more effective or less expensive alternatives. The impact of PBM practices extends beyond patients and health plans, affecting pharmacies as well. Spread pricing can significantly reduce pharmacy reimbursement rates, squeezing their already thin profit margins. This financial pressure can lead to reduced pharmacy services, longer wait times, and even pharmacy closures, particularly in underserved communities. Additionally, PBMs often impose strict performance metrics on pharmacies, requiring them to meet certain dispensing targets or face penalties. These metrics can incentivize pharmacies to prioritize cost-cutting measures, potentially impacting patient care and medication adherence. Section 4. The regulatory landscape efforts to rein in PBM power. The opaque nature of PBM operations and their impact on drug prices have sparked calls for greater transparency and regulation. Lawmakers at both the federal and state levels have introduced legislation aimed at curbing controversial PBM practices and shedding light on their pricing strategies. One area of focus is spread pricing. Several states have passed laws prohibiting or limiting spread pricing, requiring PBMs to pass rebates directly to health plans or patients. These measures aim to reduce drug costs and ensure that savings are shared with those who ultimately bear the financial burden. Another regulatory target is PBM formulary management. Critics argue that PBMs exert undue influence over formulary design, prioritizing drugs that offer higher rebates rather than those that are most clinically effective or affordable. To address this concern, some states have implemented transparency laws requiring PBMs to disclose their formulary decision-making criteria and the financial incentives they receive from drug manufacturers. These disclosures aim to shed light on potential conflicts of interest and ensure that formulary decisions are based on patient needs rather than PBM profits. Despite these efforts, regulatory oversight of PBMs remains fragmented and incomplete. The industry has successfully lobbied against federal legislation that would impose stricter transparency requirements and limit controversial practices. PBMs argue that such regulations would stifle innovation and disrupt the pharmaceutical supply chain. However, consumer advocates and some lawmakers maintain that greater regulation is necessary to protect patients and ensure drug affordability. The ongoing debate over PBM regulation highlights the complex interplay of competing interests in the healthcare system. Section 5. What consumers can do. Navigating the PBMs. While the opaque practices of PBMs can seem daunting, there are steps consumers can take to mitigate their impact and advocate for greater transparency and affordability. One crucial step is to become informed about your health plan's formulary and the drugs covered. Familiarize yourself with the different tiers on the formulary and the associated out-of-pocket costs. If your prescribed medication is on a higher tier with a significant copay, inquire about lower cost alternatives within the same drug class. Your doctor may be able to prescribe a therapeutically equivalent medication that is more affordable. Don't hesitate to ask your pharmacist about drug prices and potential cost-saving options. Pharmacists are valuable resources who can provide insights into generic alternatives, discount programs, and patient assistance programs offered by drug manufacturers. They can also help you understand your insurance coverage and navigate the complexities of your health plan's formulary. Building a relationship with your pharmacist can empower you to make more informed decisions about your medications and potentially reduce your out-of-pocket costs. Finally, consider engaging in consumer advocacy efforts aimed at promoting PBM transparency and accountability. Support organizations that advocate for patient rights and drug affordability. Contact your elected officials to express your concerns about PBM practices and urge them to support legislation that promotes transparency and protects consumers. By raising your voice and joining forces with other concerned individuals, you can contribute to a collective effort to bring much-needed reform to the pharmaceutical industry. Remember, knowledge is power, and by understanding the role of PBMs, you can become a more informed and empowered healthcare consumer. Thanks for watching. Stay informed and empowered in your healthcare journey.